from the mobile Hudson Media Group studio right here in the Uribe compound. This is Talking Politics, and I am the professor, Fernando Uribe. There's a lot to discuss, so let's get started. Here's what I'm thinking about right now. Folks, these are very dire economic times, especially here in the Garden State. And recent reports have indicated, per the office of Governor Phil Murphy, that the state of New Jersey could indeed be facing some serious downturn when it comes to state revenue. Now, let me just give you some facts here to sort of unpackage what's going on and really why we should all be very concerned. Now, last week via NJ.com, the governor indicated that the New Jersey treasurer is predicting that the state will face a massive revenue loss over the next 2 fiscal years, including a crippling $7 billion loss next year. Now, again, this is according to a new bond disclosure. Now, states across the country are seeing their tax collections plummeting in the weeks since social distancing was enforced due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And of course, this has forced businesses to close all over the country and put more than 33 million Americans out of work. And here in New Jersey, for example, tax withholdings have been down 7% during the month of April, and even sales tax collections were down nearly 14%. Now, the new disclosure by the governor provides a general sort of overview of the possible impact that this pandemic could have on state finances. Now, the treasurer here in New Jersey announced that until May 22nd is when the state will have to provide the legislature with more detailed projections. Now, the state may come up with $2.8 billion short of the fiscal year, which was slated to end coming up on June 30th, according to the disclosure by the state treasurer. Now, Murphy and the legislature extended the fiscal year until September 30th, but the revenue projections are tied to the original 12-month fiscal year. Now, even more grim is the fact that the treasurer is projecting a $7.3 billion decline from her projections from the fiscal year that would have begun coming up on July the 1st. Now, the combined estimated revenue loss is approximately $10.1 billion. That's a large amount of money, folks, here in the state of New Jersey. But it's something we have to keep an eye on for sure. Now, again, the governor went on to say this week that he had been warning that the state is facing huge shortfalls and could lead to historic layoffs of public workers in both state and local governments. He's frozen about $1 billion in discretionary spending and asked the federal government for billions of dollars in aid and state lawmakers to borrow from the Federal Reserve. Now, the governor went on to say last week he reversed an executive order that required the state to maintain a surplus of at least $1.3 billion. Now, in addition to that, the governor went on to say, as we said before, in order to address this unprecedented fiscal crisis, it will require extremely difficult decisions in the weeks and months ahead, which will necessitate a combination of critically needed borrowing, budget and appropriation adjustments, and more robust federal assistance. Now, a revenue report on the April tax collections released earlier this past week provided the first glimpse into the state's economic pain. Now, it indeed show that the tax collections fell to about $3.5 billion compared to last April, a figure that actually reflects losses and delays in personal and corporate income tax payments that are typically due in April, but have been postponed now to July. Now, the recent bond disclosure reveals how deep that pain may go. Now, the Murphy administration has gone on to say that it's projecting that tax collections will come up to $2.76 billion short of the $39.5 billion the state was expecting to take in this year. Now, they've lowered their projections for the next fiscal year by $7.3 billion, from $41.2 to $33.8 billion. Now, folks, the governor this past February proposed a budget of $40.9 billion for the next fiscal year. Now, that's a budget that relied on tax increases on incomes over $1 million, cigarettes, opioid manufacturers, and corporations whose employees are enrolled in Medicaid. Now, the governor says he has until August the 25th to provide the legislature with a revised budget proposal. Now, folks, this is something that, quite frankly, should concern all of us. And the reason that I say that is because for many years, not just only on this program, which is only very recent, but on my podcast, I've been denouncing the fiscal irresponsibility that seems to be taking place in Trenton. Now, folks, listen, while both parties can be held liable for this, and we can certainly place some blame, ladies and gentlemen, the reality is that there's one party that has controlled the legislature for nearly a quarter of a century here in New Jersey. Now, while governors have come and gone from different parties, whether it's Phil Murphy, who's currently in office, from Chris Christie, who served for 8 years, from John Corzine, who served 4 years, and even to his predecessors, Jim McGreevey, Christy Whitman, and even Jim Florio. Whether it's a Republican or Democrat in the governor's office, it's quite frankly been extremely irrelevant because it's the Democratic controlled legislature that has put us in a fiscal rut. Now, let me just give you a little more context about how serious the problem has been here in New Jersey. And let me quote a former assemblyman here in New Jersey by the name of Michael Patrick Carroll. And he's a guy, if you don't follow him on social media, I suggest you do that. He's very smart, he's a brilliant attorney, and more importantly, what I would call a very dedicated public servant during his time in the New Jersey State Assembly. Now, he had a post last week that really caught my eye, and I want to read it to you verbatim so you can understand, quite frankly, the problem that exists here in the Garden State. Now, the former assemblyman said as follows. And he went on to say, for fiscal year 2003, Jim McGreevey and the Trenton Democrats spent just north of $23 billion. For 2021, Governor Phil Murphy is proposing spending just south of $43 billion. In short, spending has increased by $1 billion a year for each year that the Democrats have controlled the legislature. This while simultaneously stiffing the pension funds each and every year. Now, this is the blue state economic model. Consistently raise taxes and use the revenue for handouts to powerful special interests and constituencies who return the favor with votes and campaign contributions. Now, you can always get away with that in a good economy, but that model does not survive contact with any sort of economic contraction because unlike the feds, we simply cannot print up money here in Trenton. Now, maybe for instance, Newark will have to get by spending what Toms River, for example, spends on each kid in their public school system. If we spent on average what, let's say, the state of Massachusetts spends, we could cut public school, and don't say education, the spending itself by 15%. This would save the state of New Jersey about $3 billion in state spending all by itself. And by the way, Massachusetts pays its teachers on average about $10,000 more than we do here in the Garden State. Now, he goes on to say as well, eliminate spending on babysitting and free tuition, end all funding for illegals, let Planned Parenthood live off its huge endowment, and so on. This is what we get for electing Democrats. The fault, dear Brutus, is not in our stars, but in our votes. And I couldn't have said it better than the former assemblyman just did. And ladies and gentlemen, I've talked about it on this program repeatedly. There seems to be no ability for the adults in the room, in the legislature, to spend responsibly. We continue to raise taxes on almost anything here in New Jersey. We have the highest property taxes anywhere in the country. And for whatever reason, Trenton Democrats feel that, hey, raising taxes is the best way to go to fiscal prosperity. No, it isn't. It's about cutting and having serious cuts. And that's something that the legislature is just not capable of, and neither is Governor Murphy. Now, folks, let me just sort of preface this by saying that, listen, I'm someone who tends to be more of a fiscal conservative and someone who tends to lean somewhat progressive on some social issues. But as you know, I'm a very center-right person. But here in New Jersey, ladies and gentlemen, it's not about being center-right or center-left. It's about being commonsensical. And it's not happening here in Trenton. You know what? We create way too many government jobs. There's too much of a bloated bureaucracy in Trenton. And now the chickens are coming home to roost. Folks, listen, I understand that with new administrations come new jobs and new opportunities. I understand all that. So I don't want to put the blame on Governor Phil Murphy because he's not the only one guilty of this. Chris Christie was guilty of it. John Corzine was guilty of it. Jim McGreevey was guilty of it. Christy Whitman was guilty of it. Jim Florio was guilty of it, and so on and so forth. So it's not just, it's sort of, I think, oversimplifying the problem of we're just going to blame the governors. No, it's about who's occupying the seats in the legislature, both in the state assembly and the state senate. And for years, what's been going on? All of these special interest groups have had their hands in the cookie jar. Whether it's Planned Parenthood, whether it's the NJEA, whether it's advocacy groups that sort of politic all day long for illegals here in the state of New Jersey. And this is something that has to stop, okay? Planned Parenthood, for example, received so much in federal dollars and so much from taxpayer dollars overall, then now they want to cry poverty because their business or their not-for-profit organization can't seem to function. Well, you find a way to get money somehow from donors and everything else. Why do you need taxpayer dollars? You don't. You seem to survive very well on the endowments and the generous donations from sponsors of any kind. So you know what? Buckle your pants and start operating a budget that's responsible. To the NJEA, listen, I have a lot of friends of mine who are teachers at the high school, middle school, and elementary school levels. And every pay period, their dues go to paying for membership fees and everything else that the NJEA does. And what do they seem to be doing? For years now, they've been taking tens of millions of dollars from your membership dues, ladies and gentlemen, to finance campaigns for either politicians, for ones that they like or they don't like, instead of taking that money and reinvesting it into the school districts that so desperately need it. But don't tell that to the membership, more specifically the executive board at the NJEA, because they don't want to hear it. Because for them, it's more about politics than just helping people. And that's the truth. Whether it's about creating a legal fund through the state budget, which Governor Murphy has done for the last 2 years, to provide legal representation for illegals here in New Jersey. Folks, listen, having worked in government for 10 years, whether it's been for the judiciary or the Office of the Public Defender, here's a newsflash. Taxpayer dollars are allocated to provide for the Office of the Public Defender. So whether illegals are picked up on an actual criminal offense or, let's say, a misdemeanor, regardless of the fact, they do get legal representation. Now, they may not get legal representation for their immigration status, but quite frankly, folks, that's not my problem, and nor should it be yours. Okay, again, these are your taxpayer dollars. They're not supposed to be here. And for whatever reason, this governor and attorney general here in the state, along with Democrats in legislature, feel the need to bend over backwards for illegals each and every turn. Whether it's state senators Teresa Ruiz, whether it's, a multitude of other public servants in New Jersey, of now feeling that they should take taxpayer dollars to create discretionary funds to at least, proportionalize a stimulus check for illegals here in the state of New Jersey. Folks, if there's any nickel that should be going to help New Jerseyans, it should be going to citizens. And I get it. Immigration activists will say, well, Fernando, guess what? They do pay taxes. They receive an EIN number. And of course, they may not be citizens, but they're contributing to our payrolls. They're contributing to our economy here in New Jersey. That's all well and good, folks. But every nickel from the state treasury should be going to help citizens. And that doesn't make me a racist. That doesn't make me a bigot. It doesn't make me a xenophobe. It makes me an American. It makes me someone that believes in sound fiscal policy. And for some reason in Trenton, you're all oblivious to this. So in the coming weeks, when the governor and the state legislature has to make some tough decisions, well, guess what? I hope you do. Get rid of all these unnecessary government jobs that have no place here in New Jersey. All right? Whether it's patronage jobs or anything else. All right? I'm not talking about civil service workers, people who have passed their civil service tests, have gone through all the necessary measures to ensure that they have job security and a pension. Those are the ones we have to worry about. Not these appointed jobs, not these jobs that sort of curvy favor with any sort of political interest. No. Take care of state workers who have been in the state system. Take care of workers who, again, do not contribute to the bloated bureaucracy here in Trenton. And that's what I'm asking Governor Murphy to do. And that's what I'm also asking the legislature, specifically Democrats in Trenton, to do as well. Because you, ladies and gentlemen, have controlled the budget for almost a quarter century. Yes, as I mentioned before, governors come and go, but the legislature has been a fixed entity for quite some time. And I understand you want to help people, you want to sort of, maintain a good public approval among your constituents and all that. I understand this. This is politics, all right? For someone with multiple graduate degrees in political science, I understand the dynamics about this. But when it comes to, tighten up your belt and sitting down at the table and making some tough, responsible cuts, I'm hoping that Governor Murphy and the legislature can do that. Because for far too long, our minds have not been prioritized when it comes to money and when it comes to budgets. And as I said before, the chickens are now coming home to roost. If you don't see it, folks, you'll see it in the weeks and months ahead here in 2020 as COVID continues to dominate the headlines in our daily lives. And that's what I'm thinking about right now. On the recent edition of the 3-time award-winning podcast, Talking the Hudson, which you can listen to live every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. by going to www.blogtalkradio.com/Talking the Hudson, was the newly appointed councilman in Ward D in Jersey City, Yousef Saleh. For over 75 minutes, we spoke on a variety of different topics, but here are some highlights that I think you'll find very interesting. First and foremost, we discussed how he felt as it pertains to some on the city council not approving his appointment and whether or not he can get past this as it pertains to moving forward and working with his fellow council members. Let's check out what he had to say about it.
Tonight are curious about what your platform and agenda is going to be in Ward D. But before we get to that, I know that obviously procedurally for our listeners that upon the death of Councilman Yoon, we know that state law requires that in the absence of removal or a death, obviously in these sort of positions, there's a 30-day window in which the governing body appoints someone. Clearly, the council in Jersey City decided to do that at the beginning of the month. We know that it was a vote of 6-2. Councilman, to be fair, I've gotten a lot of messages online from people saying, well, we know that Yousef is very qualified. Why were there 2 dissenting votes? Is there a problem on the council? Is it something that maybe is deep-rooted? Listen, I know you're going to take the high road here tonight, but when you learned of the vote, was it disappointing to you to hear 2 dissenting votes? Or did you just expect that because, listen, this is procedural and not everybody's going to be on board?
In all honesty, I did feel a little disappointed, but it took me, very quick amount of time to get over it because I have relationships with every single member on the council. And I ran in 2017 and, have a great deal of respect for every single individual. Councilman Boggiano, he voted for me, and I was surprised by that. And I was super grateful and thankful. I have a great, deep respect for him and his family and everything that they've done. James Solomon, I have a great, deep respect for him as well. I've been to his fundraisers. Rolando Lavaro, he and I have had a long relationship as well, spanning back to 2013. So, part of it is, it is what it is, right? I'm not going to sweat it. I still am going to work with them because that's what this position and this moment demands, that I reach across any aisle, any table. We're all in this together. Every single council member, every single resident in Jersey City, in the Heights, that's what we have to do.
Next, I asked the councilman as to his thoughts concerning the legacy of Michael Yoon, and of course, since he was viewed as such a maverick on the city council, how much pressure he's facing in trying to live up to the expectations of his constituents in Ward D, but more importantly, trying to kick the perception that he might just be a rubber stamp for Mayor Stephen Fulop in upcoming council meetings. Let's hear what he had to say about it.
Presenting his ward. He was not going to go with the status quo. He wasn't nervous or hesitant to oppose the mayor when he has to, which he has. Clearly, he was viewed very, very warmly in the ward. I know that last time in 2017, it wasn't like Michael just scraped by winning the close election. He romped the competition. Obviously, he was a guy that won by well over 60% of the vote, and clearly the margins and the disparity was really large. But nevertheless, Michael never let that get to his head. He worked with the council. He stood up to the mayor when he had to, and he stood up to other council members when he had to as well. I think a big concern tonight, Yousef, and I think a lot of my listeners here, especially those Jersey City residents that are tuning in, I think a question on their mind, and I've been inundated with emails about it, is, and I'm sure you've heard it, you've read it, it's been whispered to you, whatever. There are some people out there, Yousef, that just feel that, especially with the mayor endorsing you upon, the appointment of, to the council, some Jersey City residents are concerned, especially in Ward D, that you might be a rubber stamp for the mayor, as opposed to Michael Yoon, who was not a rubber stamp for the mayor and was very independent. And we know that at the start of the year, Mayor Fulop, when he announced his council slate for 2021, Michael Yoon wasn't on there. So clearly, Michael Yoon was not going to be on Mayor Fulop's ticket. We know that most likely the mayor was going to try to run somebody against Michael. The same thing with Richard Boggiano, who was not also on the mayor's ticket. But some people are concerned that maybe you might be viewed as a rubber stamp. What do you want to tell your constituents tonight that have that overwhelming fear?
Well, I mean, let's look at the facts, Professor. I mean, you look at the facts. I was born and raised in the Heights, right? My loyalty is, I took a 23andMe. I'm 100% Heights. My loyalty is to the residents of the Heights and people that can look at my early track record, at least in the last, how many days, 13 days that I've been on the city council. I've actually worked with James Solomon and Councilman Lavaro more than I have, on anything else. They did the Uber Eats. It wasn't the Uber Eats exactly resolution, but it was essentially saying that they were capping the percentage for the companies, right? And then we're working on the rent freeze. We're working on the late payments for taxes for the city and trying to put a percentage cap on, the interest rate when you pay the late fees. So there's a number of things, and I'm very adamant about continuing the things that Michael was working on. And, Michael did agree actually with the mayor on a few things, and they were working on the Board of Education together. And I don't know necessarily if the mayor was going to run anyone against him because they, up until recently, before he passed away, they were actually working together on a huge issue, which was the Board of Ed budget. And my style of leadership is it's no drama, and I'm not there to embarrass anyone or catch headlines. I'm there to do the work, to answer the calls that residents are giving me at any hour of the day. I'm here to push the interests of everyone in the Heights first, and that's it. I have loyalty. I haven't left my neighborhood. I bought a house here. I intend to raise a family here, and I love my community and I love my neighbors, and I've seen my neighborhood change for the good and sometimes not for so good. So we are going to work on making it, as inclusive, affordable, as beautiful as possible for the residents right now and for the residents to come.
Without a doubt, it was a very insightful 75 minutes with the newly appointed councilman, Yousef Saleh. And once again, you can listen to the episode in its entirety by going to www.blogtalkradio.com/talk on the Hudson. Now, he's one of many guests I've had in 2020, and that's why the podcast continues to be very popular among local residents for getting you the exclusives you won't hear anywhere else. And now to some local news for your consideration. And let's start off in Weehawken, where an additional testing site has now become available for local residents. Now, shout out to John Hyannis with the Hudson County View for this report. Now, again, a second testing site was opened to help asymptomatic residents of both Union City and Weehawken. So again, I want to send a very special thank you to Mayors Richard Turner in Weehawken and Mayor Brian Stack in Union City for collaborating on this very important project. Now, the mayor in Union City went on to say, quote, "I'm happy to announce a second testing site has come to Union City residents. Now, those symptoms are needed to be tested, and in addition to that, a new website will also allow Union City and Weehawken residents to schedule appointments whether or not they're experiencing symptoms between the hours of 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. Now, the new testing site is located at 4100 Park Avenue in Weehawken at the Town Plaza Center, if you all remember where the former Acme store was located. Now, folks, it's very easy to go there and certainly get tested. And once again, it shows how efficient and how expedient both Mayors Richard Turner and Brian Stack are in helping the community. We know the Hudson County residents lead the state of New Jersey in positive cases. And while Bergen County cases have declined somewhat and other counties throughout New Jersey are showing somewhat of an increase, Hudson County, again, because of its dense population, is showing a very sort of serious numbers here, and it's something we have to keep an eye on. So without a doubt, again, great work by the City of Union City and the Township of Weehawken for working together and getting an additional testing site being made available for residents. As we continue to tackle COVID-19, folks, here in 2020, the important thing is to hopefully flatten that curve as quickly as we can. And for those of us that are at least not showing any symptoms, you know what? It won't hurt you to go get tested. But in the meantime, it's important to practice responsible social distancing, wear PPE when at all possible when you're outside, whether it's taking the garbage out, going to do any errands or food shopping. Do me a favor, folks, please be careful. But for anyone in your family or any neighbors that you know that may be showing symptoms or may be vulnerable, do me a favor. Make them aware of this additional testing site now available in the township of Weehawken. And now let's move to Hoboken. And once again, a special shout out to John Hines with Hudson County View for the report on this story. And I'm proud to announce that Hudson County Freeholder Anthony Romano, along with Hudson County Executive Tom DeGees, are very much proponents of utilizing eminent domain to acquire the 3 hospitals right here in Hudson County under the jurisdiction of CarePoint Health. Now, in a statement said this week, quote, "This is a brilliant idea by our county executive. The closing of 3 hospitals throughout our county would be indeed detrimental in providing health care to over 700,000 residents that call Hudson County their home. I will fight tooth and nail with whoever gets in the way of vital medical services, which is provided by the Hoboken Medical Center and Christ Hospital." Now, the county executive first vocalized his support of using eminent domain to acquire the Bayonne Medical Center, the Hoboken University Medical Center, and Christ Hospital in an op-ed he posted with the Jersey Journal. However, you remember back in March, CarePoint Health signed a letter of intent to sell the Bayonne Medical Center to a new company. Now, at the time, a spokesman for CarePoint Health said that the city of Bayonne was working with the Hudson County Improvement Authority to execute eminent domain on the property. However, though 2 weeks prior, Hudson County officials noted that Alaris Health owner Avery Eisenreich was seeking $300 million for real estate connected to the hospitals, effectively bringing negotiations to a screeching halt. Now, if you're not aware, Alaris owns 100% of the property in Bayonne, 75% of the property along with 25% of the business in Hoboken, and a 25% stake in the Christ Hospital business and property as well. The Hudson County Improvement Authority is scheduled to vote on 3 resolutions to authorize eminent domain proceedings on the land of the 3 hospitals during their upcoming meeting, according to a copy of their agenda, which was released to Hudson County View. And ultimately, it would allow the freeholders to then vote on nearly identical measures at their next freeholder meeting. Now, folks, I can't say enough about how important the usage of eminent domain will be here. So I applaud the Hudson County Executive Tom DeGees and Hudson County Freeholder out of Hoboken, Anthony Romano, for taking initiative here and leading the charge to make sure that Hudson County residents aren't left in the dark. Folks, sometimes medicine becomes big business, and sometimes when it comes to providing medical care, well, guess what? Oftentimes it becomes more about money than it does about people. But here you can tell that the Hudson County Executive and the Hudson County Freeholder out of Hoboken want to make sure that that does not become the case here in Hudson County. And that's our show for this week. To check out all of the excellent programming brought to you by the Hudson Media Group and NJ On Air, please go to their websites, www.hmgtvshows.com, www.livestream.com/HMGTV, and www.njonair.com. Don't forget to like the Hudson Media Group and NJ On Air on Facebook and follow them both on Instagram and Twitter. And live every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, you can check out the 3-time award-winning podcast, Talking the Hudson, by going to www.blogtalkradio.com/Talking the Hudson. You can listen to it from any PC, Mac, smartphone, or tablet. And never forget, if it's unbiased, unfiltered, and unafraid, it's always talking politics right here with the Hudson Media Group and NJ On Air. I'm Fernando Uribe. Thank you so much for watching.
Don't forget to catch Fernando's podcast at blogtalkradio.com/talkonthehudson. New episodes available every Wednesday night at 9 p.m.